If you want to go to Russia from the Atlantic Ocean, you enter the North Sea, go past Copenhagen into the Baltic Sea, go between Stockholm and Riga, then Helsinki in the Gulf of Finland, and finally to St. Petersburg, the window on the west and the crown jewel of Russia. In St. Petersburg in 1911, a Latvian missionary, William Fetler, met Barbara Kovalevsky, a Russian student at the university. They were married in 1913. Over the next 20 years, Barbara bore William 13 children. The children had an aptitude for music and played various instruments in William's church orchestra. In 1934, after the last child was born, and as Europe was falling into another great war, the family decided to emigrate to the United States. But they needed money for the trip. They decided to try a gamble. The children would drop out of school for a year and go on tour as a family band. William Fetler was born in Tukums, Latvia, near Riga, in 1883. In a family portrait from 1899, William, the oldest at 16, is in the back row with a bow tie, with his hands on the shoulder of his father, Andrew, a carpenter and part-time lay preacher. On the left, next to the father, is William's youngest brother, Robert. Robert would later become the assistant pastor in William's church in Riga. Behind Robert is Leonard. On the right are sisters Antonia and young Melanie. Baby sister Irma is being held by her mother, Margaret. Young Irma with her parents. At the age of 20, William got a scholarship to the Spurgeon's College Seminary in London. In 1907, he graduated as valedictorian and went to St. Petersburg to begin his career as an evangelical missionary. He was very successful. In 1911, at the age of 28, he began construction of the Dom Evangelia, which was to become the largest Russian Protestant church in St. Petersburg. He traveled often to Latvia, the European countries, and the United States to raise funds for his missionary projects. He led demonstrations in Riga, the capital of Latvia, to bring Bibles to the Russian people. William went to Moscow, where he took up administrative duties at the Baptist Church, and where he made a number of friends among the Russian aristocracy. He's cited prominently in the histories of the evangelical movement in Russia. Barbara Kovalevsky was born in 1890 and spent the first 12 years of her life in a large country house in Grodno, Russia, where her father was a court official. The family was Russian Orthodox, and her mother had a lifelong dream of walking to Palestine as a pilgrim. Barbara's brother, Peter Kovalevsky, was the principal of the Gymnasium, upper high school, and taught Latin and Greek. Barbara loved the sciences, as well as music, drama, and literature. She was especially fond of Pushkin, Lermontov, and Dostoevsky. After graduation from school, she went to the university at St. Petersburg, where she lived with an aunt and was an enthusiastic student. She had very little to eat, and sometimes would pick out of the trash can food that other students had thrown away. She contracted typhoid fever, and because she was so malnourished, she nearly died at the age of 18. This picture was taken as she was recovering. When she was 21, Barbara attended William Fettler's services in St. Petersburg, was converted to his faith, and worked as a volunteer in his office. One day, William and Barbara went out for a buggy ride, and he proposed. With their engagement, Barbara was taken under the wing of William's family. Here she is with William's sister, Antonia. William sent Barbara for a year to England to learn English, and then a year to Bad Freienwalde in Germany to learn German at a religious school, accompanied by his sister Melanie. On July 13, 1913, Barbara and William were married in St. Petersburg in his newly finished church, the Dom Evangelia. He was 30, she was 23. In the following years, Barbara provided William with a home and also collaborated with him as a consultant, writer, editor, researcher, and translator. His missionary work became hers. In 1914, the year after they were married, was momentous for William and Barbara. Russia entered into the Great World War and changed the name of St. Petersburg to Petrograd. Barbara bore her first child, Daniel, and William was arrested by the Tsarist government for his Protestant evangelicism, which was seen as defying the Russian Orthodox Church. The document by which he was exiled to Siberia is dated November 22, 1914. The next day, thanks to William's friends in the Russian aristocracy, his sentence was commuted to banishment from Russia. Prince Oscar Bernadotte of Sweden, who knew of William's missionary work, invited the young family to come and live in Sweden, which they did. The following year, William, Barbara, and baby Daniel went to the United States for a lengthy stay. They sailed on the Bergensfjord from Christiania, today's Oslo, in Norway. The Fettlers are the first three listed on the ship's manifest at New York. William established missionary offices in Philadelphia and Chicago. In December 1915, the second child, Timothy, was born in New York. Lydia, the first daughter, was born in 1917, also in New York. Meanwhile, in Russia, the political ferment exploded. In March 1917, the Tsarist government capitulated to the revolution, and its power was taken over by the provisional government of Alexander Kerensky. 2 months later, Latvia proclaimed its independence from Russia. 5 months after that, on October 24, 1917, the Bolsheviks, led by Trotsky and Lenin, staged a coup d'etat in St. Petersburg, now Petrograd, and began the 5-year-long Russian Civil War. The Fettlers were still in the United States. Mary was born in New York in 1918, and Paul in Philadelphia in 1920. In 1921, the family went to England, where John was born at Bournemouth. In 1922, they went to Germany. Barbara, with her children, went again to Bad Freienwalde, where the seventh child, Philip, was born in 1923, while William went to Berlin on his missionary work. In February 1924, William went to the United States for a 2-month stay. He sailed on the RMS Olympic, sister ship to the Titanic. When he returned, the family moved to Riga, where they were to stay for 10 years and where the rest of the family were born. At that time, Philip was a year old. The growing family began to pose for photographs in what would become their customary formation. Elizabeth was born in 1924. Andrew was born in 1925, David in 1927, and Peter in 1929. James was born in 1931. And the last one, Joseph, was born in 1934, the same year that the family would leave Latvia. In Riga, William had built a new church called the Salvation Temple, usually referred to as the Templars, built from seed money from John D. Rockefeller and the First Presbyterian Church of New York. It opened its doors in January 1927, and its auditorium seated 2,000 people. The ambassadors of the United States and of Britain performed the opening ceremony. The Templars had a choir and a young people's band headed by Daniel, who had studied music and who taught the youngsters to play instruments. As the Fettler children grew, they too joined the Templars band. In 1932, William again went to America for a year to raise funds. His project to send Bibles into Russia was described in the December 5th issue of Time magazine. In 1933, when the family heard that William was on his way home, they decided to surprise him with a musical performance. He was delighted with the band made up of his own children and promptly had them play at his church services. The Fettler children had become an amateur band. They gave a few concerts for friends and occasionally played in other churches. In 1931, the conductor was Little David, later replaced by Peter and then by James. The inscription on the postcard says, in Latvian, "The Orchestra of William Fettler, the Rainbow," possibly because the family sits in a rainbow kind of curve, a feature that became standard in the concerts. At this time, European nationalisms were hardening. Mussolini took power in Italy in 1922, Stalin in Russia in 1928. In 1933, Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany in his drive for power. He addressed old President Hindenburg on Potsdam Day, and it was clear who had the power. In 1934, Hitler, in effect, became dictator of Germany. He celebrated Nazi Party Day. Recovering from the humiliations of World War I, the German war machine was gearing up again. In Latvia itself, Parliament was dissolved and within 2 years became a dictatorship under Karlis Ulmanis. In 1934, the family left Riga. William had bought a hotel in Amsterdam on Archterbergwal Street for the Russian Missionary Society. The idea was to use the hotel as a source of income, as a venue for church services, and as a home for the family. The family band gave occasional concerts in the church. They lived in Amsterdam for 2 years, but the hotel was a financial failure. In 1936, it was given over to the creditors, and the family went back to Sweden, where they would try to support themselves by giving concerts. First they went to Oslo and had a big success, and then to Stockholm, where they found a large house to rent 12 miles to the south in Clinton. That was the year Hitler invaded the Rhineland. The years in Sweden were good ones. The Gundersbergs villa had a patio where you could look down on the fjord and see the boats going by. Daniel arranged weekend concerts throughout Sweden in collaboration with the Salvation Army. New photos were made in 1938. James, called Jackie, now 5 years old, had become the band's conductor. Daniel bought a bus, and the longer trips began. The band would sometimes spend several days on the road. When the family left for a trip, the suitcases were brought out in a wheelbarrow. Daniel had already prepared the itineraries and advertising. The band traveled north as far as Kiruna, Sweden's northernmost city, and to Lapland inside the Arctic Circle. On the road, they often ate outside. Breakfast was usually cornflakes and a jug of milk. On someone's birthday, Barbara would set up a birthday table. William had one in 1938. A few weeks later, Barbara and William celebrated their silver anniversary. In their travels, the family had a few accidents, but none very serious, most often from sliding into a ditch on a snowy road. Everyone depended on Daniel to fix any problems. At times they encountered more serious problems. In order to provide the children with spending money, Daniel printed postcards which the children sold after the concert. The back of the postcards had all their signatures. From left to right, James, the conductor, Paul, John, Philip, Elizabeth, Andrew, Peter, David, Mary, Lydia, Timothy, Daniel, the oldest, and Joseph, the youngest. In Clinton on Christmas, Daniel, as a big surprise, bought skis for everyone. In the summer, the family went to the beach to swim in the Baltic Sea, or to show off for the local girls. Daniel spent much of his time planning. In 1937, the owner of the Gundersberg Villa in Clinton wanted to renovate it, and the Fettlers moved to another house. The parquet floors of the Gundersberg Villa were being refinished. The cleaning fluid caught fire. Only the chimney remained. In March 1938, Hitler invaded Austria. In November, Kristallnacht in Germany started a new wave of terror. The Baltic countries, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, also came under growing pressure, Germans on one side and Soviets on the other. As Daniel recollected, all Europe knew that war was coming. The Fettlers felt it would be wise to go to the United States. In order to earn money for the boat passage, they all would have to drop out of school for a year and make a grand tour of Sweden, Denmark, and Switzerland. It was 1938. In September, they went to the Swedish island of Gotland, where Daniel had booked 3 weeks of concerts. It was in Gotland that their plans for a tour crystallized. They returned to Clinton on October 20th. 12 days later, on November 1st, they left Sweden for good. They first went to Copenhagen. Timothy, an American citizen by birth, decided to return to the United States. In December, William left the family to attend to his work in Riga. After Copenhagen, the family band started off for Switzerland. They arrived at the Danish border with Germany in mid-December 1938. Now they had to get ready to travel through Nazi Germany. As Daniel recollected,
reaching the Danish-German border in the evening, we were detained by Nazi border guards who took me into a room where they began to cross-examine me about who we were, why we had children born in Russia, England, Germany, Latvia, and the United States, whether we really were one family, where our father was, why he was not with us, and why we had come to Germany, whether we had Jewish ancestry, why we did not live in Latvia but all over the world, with one guard sarcastically asking whether we were gypsies. They kept me all night while making many calls to all kinds of places. No matter what I said, they did not seem to believe me. But when dawn came,